Okay. So welcome everybody to another exciting AFSI Zoom meeting. I'm Judy Friedman-Kadish. I'm Director of Americans for a Safe Israel, also known as AFSI. We work to educate the public about the real Israel, the one that the mainstream media hides, and give you our beliefs about what will make Israel a strong, safe, Jewish state. Israel's been experiencing tremendous upheaval lately. Ostensibly, it's about judicial reform, but we believe it goes deeper. We believe that the Israeli left is desperate to retain control of the country through the judicial system. While there seems to be a break in the upheaval, the airport, the stock market, the schools, etc., have reopened because the government coalition agreed to stop the reform for time. What does the Arab world see and think about the events transpiring? What do our enemies think when they see the division in Israeli society? How was China able to broker an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran just when the Saudi attitude towards Israel appeared to be softening? We can't begin to answer these questions, so we bring you our friend Mordechai Kedar to try to help us make sense of what is happening. Dr. Kedar is one of Israel's leading figures in understanding the Arab world. He is the Middle East analyst of the daily newspaper Makor Rishon, as well as other publications. Dr. Kedar is the director of the Center for Study of Middle East and Islam, a research associate in the Begin-Sadat Center for Strategic Studies, and Dr. Kedar is a religious Zionist. He is an expert in Israeli Arab culture. He served for 25 years in IDF Military Intelligence, where he specialized in Islamic groups, the political discourse of Arab countries, the Arab press and mass media, and the Syrian domestic arena. He holds a Ph.D. from Bar-Ilan University. He's fluent in Hebrew, Arabic, and of course, English. He's described as one of the few, one of the few Arabic-speaking Israeli pundits seen on Arabic satellite channels defending Israel. He's also the VP of a relatively new app that you can get on your phone or wherever, called Newsrael. Dr. Kedar is a frequent guest in the Israeli, Arab, and international media. And by the way, just today, he promised to spend time with us on our next Chizuk mission, which will begin on May 15th in Israel. And we look forward to that as well. But right now, we just bring you the expert on this kind of thing, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Judy. Usually I'm not so happy about these introductions because such an introduction might raise the expectations too high, but I will try to meet the expectations. First of all, I would like to dedicate this meeting to the dear memory of Helen Friedman, who, as much as I know, established AFSI. And ladies like her, and of course, Judy and everyone else who takes part in AFSI, definitely give us, the Israelis, the feeling that we are not alone in this unfortunate area named the Middle East, and our ability to survive in such an area is depending to a large extent on the support which we get from the free world, and especially from the United States of America, as you do. Thank you so much for what you do, and thank you so much for what you are. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel, for like 3 months, is divided between people who are, very visible in the streets, in riots, against the willing of the Knesset to legislate some laws which will limit the fact that the Supreme Court and the judicial system in Israel became factually the masters of the country. A democracy, any democracy, as you all know, is a division of powers between the legislative, the executive, and the judicial authorities. And this is how it was here in this country until the mid-90s. Ever since then, since Aaron Barak became the president of the Supreme Court, little by little, without people noticing it, the judicial system became superior to the other authorities, means above the Knesset and above the government. The situation as it is today is that every decision of the Knesset, every law, every decision of a minister, every decision of mayor in every city, every decision of the people who we elect is subject to cancellation by the judicial system. Why? Because the judicial advisor or a judge, when it comes to court, they do not like it. They don't even have to give any explanation. And this is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship of the judicial system. And the problem is not only this. The problem is the majority of the people here in Israel are either Haredim or religious or Masoretic or conservative. And this is actually the right here in Israel, which today has the majority in the Knesset, while the liberals and the secular are a minority in the country, to a degree that the right means the traditional, the Masoretic, the conservative echelons in the Jewish community here in Israel is bigger than the liberal plus the Arabs, who are 20% of the population here in Israel. Means that the right side of the political map or the political sectors is the vast majority of the country. Yet, they cannot legislate anything which will not be according to the dictates of the far leftist Supreme Court. And this situation is being criticized for years already. Books were written about this. And actually, we, in the right side of the map, we question why should we go to vote to the Knesset if the Knesset cannot legislate laws which will represent our values and our willing. So what does it worth to go and to elect for the Knesset if the Knesset is subject to decisions of another body which is not elected? So, and this is not a democracy. This is what we'll say, this is Supreme Courtocracy, if I can create a word now in English. Supreme Courtocracy. And this is actually what happened in Israel during the last 27, 28 years. It happened little by little. It happened gradually. It happened without fanfares and without announcing and without, big voices about this. And this is how Aaron Barak, the then president of the Supreme Court, introduced this revolution without telling anyone. And this is the situation. So since we noticed it, finally, and we elected a right-wingish Knesset, now the Knesset is supposed to start legislating laws which will limit the ability of the Supreme Court to control the whole country. And this is actually the struggle. The left, which lost the elections time and again, is trying to perpetuate its rule over the right, which is much bigger in the population, and now bigger in the Knesset as well. And this is why they are in the streets, to perpetuate their rule. However, and here comes the big however, it's not that we have only two echelons, one left, one right. In Israel, the population is a whole array. It's a continuum. It's not one against the other. It's a continuum of things and approaches. And now, what the two sides decided after 3 months of balagan in the streets, they started to sit together, finally, to sit together and to work out something which will give both sides something which they can live with, while giving up on something which they can live without. And this is the only way how to continue to exist. Because if we start fighting each other in this country, this is the end of the state of Israel. And this is actually what we see in the Arab world around us, and in Iran, which is Islamic world and not an Arab world. Our enemies see this divide here in Israel, and they understand, and they see also the consequences of the divide, that all kinds of elite groups, like some pilots of the IDF, some cyber fighters, some people from the economy, they all, okay, if the Supreme Court will be put again in its size, we are not going to serve in the army, we are not going to serve this, and we will move the money to banks abroad. A lady, one of the leading figures of this anti-Knesset movement, moved her money, her company's money, to Silicon Valley Bank. Okay? And you know exactly what happened to this bank a few days later. And I believe she lost some of her investments. Okay. So I'm not happy to what happened to her, but this is what happened. So now we are trying, or the Knesset, or the both sides and the Knesset are trying to sit and to figure out what can be done. Unfortunately, the American administration is intervening in what happens in Israel. It was published that the State Department gave $38,000 to one of the organizations which is now in the streets against the Knesset. And this is something which we in Israel, we feel hurt that the American administration is actually funding the riots in the streets against the government and against the Knesset. What is it? Would they allow us support, let's say, some organization which fights against the Democratic Party? Would they tolerate it? Of course, we don't do it. But this is exactly what they do here. Intervene in or interfere in what happens here in Israel. We have to figure out what we want to do with ourselves. It's our task, it's our mission, and it's our duty. We don't need anyone to start pouring money into all kinds of organizations. And you know what? When you see the flags which these people in the streets are waving, they're the same flag. Exactly the same flag, means these flags was produced exactly for this event. Because this is what happens. And we know exactly who produces them. So it's okay. Let them make money. So this is actually what happens. first of all, the intervention of other powers in our democratic processes. Secondly, what we see, as I said, that our neighbors are sitting, very, with big pleasure to see how we, or how they think that Israelis actually are destroying their houses. Now, every one of them is quoting a verse from the Quran, chapter 59, verse 2, which says about the Jews, the days of Muhammad, who will destroy their homes with their own hands, and the hands of the believers, means the Muslims. Means that the Jews are destroying their own homes. And what happened in Israel, and they all saw in live broadcast, is that actually the Israelis, as they thought, are destroying their home. I am a member of an organization named Bitchonistim, means the people who are concerned with Israel's security. We have connections, direct connections, with commanders of units, and they all said that not even one unit is not prepared to the battle. Not even one unit, even though some dozens or hundreds of fighters, pilots, whatever, published that they are not willing to go to Miluim, to reserve, as long as the government wants to push these laws, which will change the status of the Supreme Court. Israel has many, many more pilots and everybody else who are willing to serve regardless of the political issues. There is a small minority of people who announced that they are unwilling to go to reserve, to serve in reserve, but they have almost no influence on factual issues. Of course, in the media, they are on right, left, and center. In the international media as well, they have very big echo of the media, and we actually saw what Thomas Friedman wrote in the New York Times. So definitely it makes a lot of echo, but factually, here in Israel, the impact of their activity is more public and in the media rather than in factual life. So this is what is happening here. And I think that in the end of the day, they will find a way to continue the life of Israel as it was. However, meanwhile, Israel is being viewed as weak because of these things, and to a degree that some Arab speakers are talking about the Israeli Spring, which came 12 years after the Arab Spring started in the end of 2010 and beginning of 2011. Okay, we have news for them. We don't have any other country, we don't have any other government or Knesset, and we don't have other nation, and nobody really is fighting against the country. Okay, we have issues, we have the disputes, we have differences, like, as we say in Yiddish, zwei Jiden, drei Dayes, 2 Jews with 3 opinions, or 4 opinions. Every Jew has 2 opinions at least about everything. So, okay, this is our culture, this is our history, this is our mindset of tarbut machloket, the culture of dispute. Okay, you see it in the Gemara, you see it everywhere. So, okay, we argue about everything because we are Jews, after all. So, this is what's happening here. And I do hope that, and I do have the reason to believe that these 2 sides will find a way out from this crisis, and our neighbors will have to adjust their expectations to the situation in Israel, because right now they see us as weak, or they think that we are weak, that we are, divided, that we cannot resist anything which comes from the outside. But this image definitely damages Israel in the Middle East arena. What do I mean? As we all know, the Abraham Accords, which were signed almost 3 years ago, were based on two things. One is the Iranian threat, especially on the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Bahrain, on one side. And the other thing is the Israel's strength and Israel's power and Israel's ability to attack the Iranians almost once or twice every week in Syria, and Iran does not retaliate. And this is what they saw. And, and the reason which they gave to themselves about the fact that Iran does not retaliate is because Iran is afraid of Israel. And in the Middle East, if you succeed to deter your enemies, they don't attack you. This is, basic thing here. And the fact that the Iranians are not attacking Israel is because Israel knows how to deter the Iranians, while Israel is not deterred when it comes to Iran. So they wanted to, be closer to Israel because Israel is a strong country. Add to this another fact that the United States of America actually abandoned the Middle East through the last, I don't know where to start it, because we have already seen, already 20 years ago, we saw how the United States actually reduces its interest in the Middle East. But what happened recently, I would say the recent 3-4 years, definitely countries like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Bahrain feel that America became a paper tiger. What happened with the Ukrainian war is actually increased this feeling, because, as you all might know, there is an agreement which was signed in 1994 in Budapest. Therefore, it is called the Budapest Memorandum, in which the Ukraine gave up on its share of nuclear bombs, which the Soviet Union formerly had. These bombs should have been divided between Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. And both Kazakhstan and Ukraine gave up, thanks to the pressures which President Clinton maintained on them. And he actually said in one of his in the signing of this memorandum that Ukraine now is safer. That's what Clinton said in that ceremony of the signing. Okay, now we see how safe the Ukraine is. Believe me, if Ukraine had kept a part of the nuclear weapons which the Soviet Union formerly had, I highly doubt if Putin would dare to attack the Ukraine if they had kept those nuclear bombs, which they were eligible to keep. But thanks to pressures which President Clinton maintained on them, they gave up. And of course, they got this memorandum in which the United States of America and Britain and France and NATO are actually guaranteeing the contiguity of their land. And now we see how this guarantee, or how much this guarantee worth. Actually nothing. So, since the West in general, and America in particular, does not stand to its commitments to its friends and allies, why should Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries why should they rely on the West in general, and in America in particular? What? Even if they had some kind of understanding or even agreements with the Americans, will the Americans support them if Iran attacks them? Definitely not. So this is why the West in general, and America in particular, is viewed today in the Middle East as paper tiger. Not only this, ever since the invasion or since even the September 11, 2001, the American policy vis-a-vis the Islamic world is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and in other places as well. And the Saudis are very angry about this because the Saudis and the Muslim Brotherhood are enemies because of reasons which I can get into, but let's, I'll tell you why. In Saudi Arabia, the religion is part of the government. The Muslim Brotherhood is an organization which is against the governments. In Egypt, in Jordan, in Syria, here in Israel as well, we have this organization. The Muslim Brotherhood, wherever they are a revolutionary organization against the government wherever they are. While in Saudi Arabia, the religious echelons are with the government, supporting the government. And there is no way to bridge between an Islamic thought, which is an opposition to the government, and on the other side, Islamic thought, which is part of the government. This is I would say the clash, the reason for the clash between the Saudis and the Muslim Brotherhood. Unfortunately, the United States supported the Muslim Brotherhood, especially the President Morsi in Egypt, who was elected in mid-2012 to be a president. The Saudis worked with Sisi in order to oust him, and they succeeded a year later, in the mid of 2013, to get rid of Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood president of Egypt. And President Obama kept calling Sisi to reinstall Morsi, the president of the Muslim Brotherhood, while the Saudis supported Sisi, who ousted Morsi. Okay? So this was another clash between the United States, which was behind the Muslim Brotherhood and Morsi, and against Saudi Arabia, which supported Sisi, who ousted Morsi, and who was totally against the Muslim Brotherhood, who was killing them, and who was actually put them out of, he outlawed them, the Muslim Brotherhood. So here we are. The United States on one side is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, while Saudi Arabia is totally against them. And Saudi Arabia gave actually $5 billion those days to Sisi to support the Egyptian economy. So here another reason why the Saudis and the Americans are totally opposite in the question of the supporting of the Muslim Brotherhood, and again Obama, and this was all in 2013. Then the negotiations between Iran and 5+1 means United States of America, France, Britain, China, Russia, and Germany. The JCPOA negotiations started in late 2013 into 14 into 2015, and the signing of the JCPOA means the nuclear agreement was actually a revenge of the American administration of Obama against the Saudis, who supported Sisi, who ousted the Muslim Brotherhood, who were supported by the Americans. You get it? Means now we are talking about two countries, Saudi Arabia, which leads the Arab world today, and the United States of America, which cannot agree on anything. Then in 2018 comes the Khashoggi affair. The Saudis who got rid of this journalist who was Muslim Brotherhood and was sitting in Washington, D.C. and criticizing the Saudis and publishing articles in the Washington Post against the Saudis. And he was, originally from Saudi Arabia. So the Saudis were stupid enough to invite him to their consulate in Istanbul and to apparently kill him and apparently get rid of his body in such a vicious way. Crazy what they did. And the United States, the democratic United States, of course, is totally against it. And Joe Biden during his election campaign, announced time and again that he will consider Saudi Arabia accountable for what they did to Khashoggi. And yes, as the Saudis feel that he threw them under the bus when he was the deputy, when he was the vice president of Obama, signing already 2015, signing the JCPOA with the Saudis. Okay, so here we are. Everything between the United States and Saudi Arabia went wrong. And now comes the midterm elections of last year, and Joe Biden is afraid of the prices in the pump, wherever you go in the States. So he went to Saudi Arabia to beg the crown prince to increase the oil production in order to reduce the prices in the world and in the States again, in order to increase the chances of the Democratic Party to win in the midterm elections. So what did the Saudi do? What did they do? They reduced the production in order to raise the price, so Biden will lose. And this is actually what happened, at least in one of the houses. So the Saudis know very well how to retaliate, and they don't care about this. And not only this, now, since the United States still wants to come to agreement with the Iranians, and until this very day, so the Iranians feel very comfortable that they are being, pampered by the Americans, and the Saudis have no support. The United States actually betrayed them. Israel is weak because of the demonstrations here in Israel. So the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Bahrainis have no other choice but to think in the logic of, if you cannot beat them, means the Iranians, join them. So now they renewed the diplomatic relations with Iran in order to, to be part in one way or another of the coalition which is winning in the world, the coalition of Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, Venezuela, all these countries, which is the coalition against the other coalition of United States, Europe, Israel maybe, Australia maybe, which is viewed as weak. Just look at Ukraine. So here we are. The Saudis decided to change the position in the world and to position themselves with a winning coalition rather than being stuck with a losing coalition where America is stabbing the Saudis in the back time and again. And this is actually, I would say, the geostrategic picture of the Middle East now, which not only the Middle East, it also has ramifications on what happens in Ukraine, what happens in Venezuela, what happens in many other places, and of course, between United States and China. And this might be the biggest problem of the United States of today. What will happen with China? After all, the Chinese economy is connected to the American, and vice versa. The American economy is connected very tightly to the Chinese economy as well, because of all kinds of loans and other things. So here we are. We are in a very complicated world politics, and strong Israel and safe Israel is a very important component of this picture. And this is the hope. I have no doubt that our politicians will find a way, because they have absolutely no choice but to find a way how to live together with all the differences, with all the disputes, to live together, because if we don't live together, we'll die together. And we all know it, when you go to the army, in many places you see this sign or this writing on the wall in Hebrew, if im lo niyeh tluyim ze baze, niyeh tluyim ze leyad ze. Means if we don't hang up one to each other, we'll be hung up one near the other. I hope it's a good translation. So this is, I would say, what I have to say. Strong Israel is not only good for us; it's good for the Middle East, and it's good for America as well, because America really now, after the Saudis, and the Saudis, their rapprochement with the Iranians actually was done with the mediation of the Chinese. From the whole world, the Chinese were the brokers of this rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Okay? Not the Americans, but the Chinese. So the Americans have no role. In Saudi Arabia, they stab them in the back. That's what they feel. The same thing in the Gulf. Syria, anyway, is not a country anymore. Lebanon is defunct anyway. Yemen is a swamp of blood and tears. Libya is not existent. So which other country does America have except for Israel? And now they are interfering in our politics. What should we feel about this interference of the Americans? So, between you and me, I really don't know who is the one who is shaping the foreign policies in the State Department or in the White House. Really, I really don't know, because this guy, whoever he is, should learn something about the Middle East. Apparently, they don't know much, and the result is very clear. To alienate the most important country in the Middle East means Saudi Arabia, to such a degree that they go to hug with their enemies, with the Iranians, and not with the Americans. This is something which, in my humble view, should be a whistleblower or I don't know, a wake-up call in Washington, D.C. What they did to the Saudis, the way with which they treated this most powerful country in the world, or in the Middle East, and a rich country and so forth. So, and now they do the same thing to Israel. We hear now the majority in Israel feel betrayed by the American administration. What, are you working against our decision, our democratic elections, which brought about the majority in the Knesset? You support the opposition in the streets? What is this? What happened to America, which was always behind Israel, whatever government we had? Is this Ilhan Omar policy, or Rashida Tlaib, or Bernie Sanders policies? Is this what Democratic Party knows? That's how they behave? So this is what we here in Israel, many of us, most of us, feel vis-a-vis the American intervention in what happened in Israel. And this definitely, it weakens the position of Netanyahu when it comes to negotiate about the reforms which we do need in the judicial system. When everybody knows that the Americans actually are stabbing Netanyahu in the back by what Biden said, that he will not invite Netanyahu to the White House in the foreseeable future. It means that Netanyahu now enters the negotiations with the opposition in a weaker position, a weaker situation. This is another intervention of Biden in what happens in Israel, and definitely this is something which I don't know what. I do hope that people here will know exactly what they are facing, and you know what? It actually reminds me something which I think Henry Kissinger once said, that Americans' enemies, for its enemies, America is dangerous. For its friends, America is fatal.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kedar. what you gave us such a broad overview of what's happening in Israel and all over the Middle East, and including what's happening in America. I'm going to take a first question, and then we have a lot of questions from other people. I've been hearing about a new alliance called BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, which is Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, Saudi Arabia. Have you heard anything about that? And how do we get back to an alliance where America and Israel and the Western countries of NATO are the strength, and this BRICS alliance, hopefully moving Saudi Arabia over to our side, becomes the power?
Well, first of all, it needs a domestic change in America. Because right now, I think that most Americans on both sides of the political aisle do not want America to be the policeman of the world. America paid too much blood, money, and tears on wars, in Vietnam, in Korea in the 50s, in Iraq, in Libya, in many other places, which retrospectively, you look at these wars and battles which America took part in, and people really do not know why the heck we needed to interfere in Vietnam. Why the heck did we need in Korea? What sent us to Afghanistan? And look at the failure in Afghanistan. After like 10 years of fighting in Afghanistan and sacrificing so many soldiers and money, and what happened in Iraq, the invasion. So since we Americans do not really know how to deal with these kind of societies, especially in the Middle East, we should stay home and take care of our own domestic issues. And, these people do have a point. Since America fails time and again in the Middle East, why interfere in all kinds of Middle Eastern issues? And the fact that America does not want to be the policeman of the Middle East, actually, people do not take America seriously. Just to compare to Russia, what Russia did in Syria in order to save Assad. They bombed cities and towns and villages. They didn't leave a brick on a brick in Aleppo, in parts of Aleppo. So, it's not that I am advocating flattening towns on their people, but just to compare the situation. The Americans, if they do something, they do it in a surgical operation in order to hit bin Laden here or his successors there. But so maximum, his wife and his children will be hurt. Maximum, but not the whole village and not the whole city, and not a whole place like Aleppo, which is a giant city. The Russians have no problem. Look at what happened in Aleppo, what happened in other parts in Syria, and today in Ukraine. How they devastate cities, towns, villages, factories, electricity, infrastructure. They couldn't care less about anything. And this demonstration of power, of muscles, by Putin, gives him, power. So everybody wants to attach to Putin rather than to any American president, especially Biden. Okay, when you have the choice to join a powerful coalition, or a coalition which is led by people who don't get it, wherever it is in the world, so the choice is very easy. This is why you have these alliances, the new alliance in the world. And again, don't forget that they are the most powerful country in these alliances is Russia, as it was in the Warsaw Pact until the late 80s. So here we are. Yes, we do have now new coalition, which will be anti-Western.
Our wonderful Helene Fragman Abramson will ask you the next question.
Looking to see, a lot of questions are kind of off topic, so I'd like to, I think maybe I'll ask my own, but just in terms of what can be done, there's the concern that petrodollars will soon turn to Chinese currency, which would be a huge shift in obvious power, which sometimes the image is far worse than just the facts alone. Is an overthrow of the Iranian theocracy the only chance to restore quiet and safety at this point?
Look, the regime in Iran so far survived the wave, so far the biggest wave of violence, which started in mid-September, when this unfortunate lady from the Kurdish district, Amini, her second name was, and who was murdered because one of her curls came out from the hijab. But they survived because of their cruelty, how they dispersed demonstrations with shooting into the people, by hanging people, and they have no restrictions in using power. So they survive. Will they survive forever? How powerful will be the next round of violence, which can erupt in any time? So the collapse of the Iranian regime is, in my view, only a matter of time. And not only this, the contiguity of Iran will also be challenged by domestic demands for freedom, as the Ahwazis demand. Because, look, there is not even one dictatorship which survived forever. Dictatorships which are multi-ethnic tend to be fragmented. The Soviet Union was divided to 15 states: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Ukraine, Lithuania, all these countries. And these countries are ethnic countries, more or less. Yugoslavia was also divided according to ethnic lines. Now you have Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, Bosnia, all these, everyone is one separate ethnic group. Czechoslovakia was divided according to ethnic lines, Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic. The same thing will be with Iran. And you know what? Let me show you the map of Iran, the real map of Iran, which actually explains what I say. If you look at let me just open the map. Let me share it with you. This map. This map is the map of Iran, which shows the ethnic groups. You can see in the southeast is Baluchistan, means the Baluchis. In the southwest are the Arab, the Ahwaz, this district, which the flag behind me belongs to them. The Kurdish one, which is the continuation of the Kurdish district of Iraq and Turkey. This Azerbaijan, the continuation of the Azerbaijan, which was once part of the Soviet Union. So these are in the north, are independent today, Azerbaijan, and these Azeris are still in the Iranian state. These are the Turkmens, which speak Turkish, and they are the continuation of Turkmenistan, a state which also was once part of the Soviet Union. Okay, so now Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan are free, are independent, and their population, which is still in Iran, now wants independence, at least partially. So part of the riots which we saw in the last months are not only about the women's rights and the human rights of Mahsa Amini, this was her name, the lady who was murdered. It's also about the independence of these districts of ethnic groups. So this is Iran. The Persians, by the way, are a minority in Iran. The Persians are a minority. It could be that the state will be fragmented and the Ayatollah regime will continue in the Persian part of Iran. So the identity or the culture of the regime does not have a direct connection with the contiguity of the land of Iran today, because there is no Iranian nation. They don't get married with each other. They keep their identities, and they don't merge with each other to be one consolidated nation. Okay, so this is the main problem of Iran, and I think that a day will come, and we will all see how Iran is being fragmented. Just to remind you, those who still remember what happened in 1989 and 90 when the Soviet Union was divided, and nobody expected it. Nobody talked about this. Even Condoleezza Rice, who was an expert on the Soviet Union, she didn't forecast the fragmentation of the Soviet Union. Even she didn't. So here we are. Iran will be divided, and let's hope that this will change the atmosphere of the Middle East, if not the map as well. Judy, you have to...
I was muted. Okay, I think as we've just passed the 2 o'clock hour here, and the 9 o'clock hour in Israel, we are going to say goodbye to our guests as to our recording. However, we are very, very, very fortunate that Dr. Kedar has agreed to stay on with us and answer questions. As people raise their hands, we will unmute them. So
first of all, I would like to thank you all for attending this session, and I would like to welcome here a very special lady, Goldie Steiner, who just now I see her. She actually runs a nonprofit in Toronto named CILR, Canadians for Israel Legal Rights. And thank you so much, Goldie, for your activity, which definitely gives us the strength to continue. Right now, I
totally agree with that. And we are going to just end our recording.